Good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in this segment of Uniquely Union, a series of interviews that spotlights the residents of Union County that have made our county the great place to live that it is. And today we have with us the immediate former mayor of Union County, Tennessee, the Honorable Mike Williams.
Thanks, Ronnie.
How are you, Mike?
Doing fine, thank you.
My first recollection of you is at LMU. You were the head resident of the modular units, those little trailer units out behind the science building, Far Hall.
Yes.
And then my next recollection of you is you were a teacher in our school system.
Yeah,
And the head football coach, I believe.
That was a mercy deal there. I was working in Campbell County, and some local people from the school system contacted me. I believe, if I'm correct, Ronnie, the current coach at that time quit about 2 to 3 weeks before the season started, and they asked me to come and help out, which I was never a football coach, and I just thank the good Lord nobody got hurt that season, and so we made it through the season, but after that, then I moved on, because that's not what I was, but I wanted to help, my home county.
Right.
So.
And of course, you were also a teacher at high school.
Sure.
What did you teach?
Well, at that time, I was just filling in. I had, I think, 2 English classes, maybe 2 health classes, and 2 PE classes. So you just sort of had to take what was, left over from some of the others. So
Actually, I remember your mother, Dorothy, years ago when I was a child and used to go to the health department. There was Dorothy.
Yeah.
She would be a great one to interview too if she were still with us.
Well, she's with me in my heart every day. So yeah.
We've got our best representative here. One of them anyway.
Yeah.
We better clarify that, haven't
Yes,
we?
sir.
So after you left being a teacher and the football coach, where did you go next?
Well, I went back to Campbell County, that's where my grandfather and my father are from, and then ended up getting a job at Lincoln Memorial University in the development office, which is working with alumni affairs. And then while doing that, Ronnie, started working with the athletic department. I still worked with alumni, but as a sidebar, I did announcing for the basketball games and also for the baseball team while I was there. Yeah, and then it was also during that time I was asked to run for political office. So
that kind of sealed the fate for the rest of your life career for
pretty
quite
much.
A few years.
Yeah, pretty much.
So now we get to trace your political journey.
Yeah.
First, you were a candidate were you a representative first?
Yes, I was state representative for 3 terms. Yeah.
And then
6 years.
Then you went immediately from that to state senator, right?
Yeah, there are 3 terms, which is 12 years, yeah.
Did you find being a state representative and a state senator rewarding, frustrating, or a mix of both?
Absolutely. All the above. No, it's, first of all, for the public to allow you that trust to go and do that job was a great honor, but you find out when you get in that large group of people, everyone has opinions and what they think should or should not happen with the state's budget. And so you learned to what I call give and take. You learned to look at things from opposing sides. And it was a wonderful learning experience. It was a hard learning experience because I remember one of the first times I ever spoke on the House floor, Ronnie, I was speaking against the bill, and I said, we shouldn't do this because common sense dictates that we shouldn't do this. Well, after it was over with, and I guess the motion I was voting for failed, one of the guys that had been there the longest came over to me and he said, Representative Williams, that was a nice, speech you gave there, but just want you to know common sense doesn't belong here. So, and it does to a point, but it's not always that easy, And
I remember hearing a story, you can tell me if it's truth or not, when you first went, you've never been into flash and show.
No.
And the first time you went to Nashville, you were driving one of your...
It's in my front yard,
yeah,
1975 Hornet.
And it had Seen a little rough treatment, of course. Like, and they almost didn't let you in the gate, did
That's
they?
a true story. The first time, we were fortunate to win the election, and you, at some point, they send you a letter saying you're to come down to be orientated about where your office will be, and when the session starts, you sort of get job duties and responsibilities. And so they told us, and here's where you will park, in the parking garage at that time, which is under Legislative Plaza. And so I pull in a 1975 Hornet, at that time probably 175, 200,000 miles. And as you said, I used to say it was aerodynamic because it had holes in the side of it around the wheel wells, but it was just rust. But it was a very dependable car. Anyway, so out come a trooper, and he raised his hand up and he said, "Buddy, you can't park here." And I said, "Well, I was told to park here." He said, "No, this is not a public garage." And I said, "Well," I'm this is only for elected officials." And I said, "Well, I'm a newly elected official." And he stood back, Ronnie, looked at my car, and he said, "Yeah, and I'm the Burger King too." And he said, "Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do." He said, "You stay right here." Of course, I was sitting in the car. He said, "I'm going to go inside and pull the clipboard, and if your name's not on it, I'm going to write you a ticket for impersonating a public official." So I sit there just a few minutes. He comes back out with a clipboard, and then he starts this, "I am so sorry." He said, "But you got to understand, most of the people that drive in here don't drive a vehicle like this." So that was the very first time I'd ever even been in that situation in Nashville. Yeah.
So your very first appearance set you apart as somewhat different from the run-of-the-mill politician, I guess.
A little different, yeah.
While you were representative and senator, did you feel more a part as time went on of the Senate and the House of Reps, or did you always kind of maintain a strong sense of individuality?
No, I always felt like that I should remember where I came from, and that's the thing I heard most from people is don't let it change you. And it's like Ronnie, I could tell you a lot of the members that got elected when I did during the years, they either bought like an apartment or a condo. I mean, some of them even bought condos. They would share expenses, but there'd be two or three of them collectively do things like that, and they lived there. And that was not my home. Union County was my home, and I never wanted to treat that place as such. So my job was to go there, and I'd stay in a motel room, and I'll admit the first 2 or 3 years it's kind of exciting because you're traveling and going to a motel, and then you get out. But then at some point, you're living out. You just realize you're living out of a suitcase every week. But it's still you always in the back of your mind realize that there were people back home depending on you, so it just made it a lot better.
And unlike so many politicians, and of course we all have our prejudices toward and against politics.
Sure.
But so many of them go into office just normal, run-of-the-mill, middle-class people and seem to come out very wealthy.
Oh, I've seen that.
If you did, I don't mean this as an offense,
Sure.
It's just a statement of fact, but if you did, your lifestyle's still down home and plain.
Well, I'll give you an example. Ronnie, when I was named, after a period of time, when I was named chairman of the Transportation Committee, I'll give you an example how things can happen. This couple of guys come by my office one day and they said, "Hey, we went by where you lived there in Union County." Said, "You got a gravel driveway?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." "Well, we have trucks that go through there hauling asphalt. Let us just drop a load or two there when we have excess. It won't cost you a thing." And I said, "No, thank you." And they said, "But you're chairman of the transportation. You need to have a nice paved driveway." And I said, "I really appreciate your offer, but no, thank you." So, I was not, I guess, Ronnie, privy to a lot of the things that went on, but I know what people made down there. I know what the salary was. And I saw things happen. I mean, I saw people that I know were way beyond their means with how they dressed or things they were doing, but I can't say that I saw where they got it. But that was an example for me that, if I wanted my driveway paved, it would have been took care of, and I would not allow it.
But then there might have been the possibility that someone would have come back and said, now you remember when we
Oh,
paved
that's what
your
it was
driveway.
for. I mean, they won't say that, Ronnie. They won't say, it's just like that time they asked me to vote on a gambling bill for horse racing or something like that, and the group that were supportive of it were flying a lot of the members, or several of the members, up into Pennsylvania to one of their tracks to see how it was pari-mutuel betting and things like that. And they asked me if I wanted to go, and I said, no, I appreciate it. Well, no, you go, everything will be taken care of. All you got to do is just show up, get on the plane, and we'll fly you up, and everything, and you can see what we do, and then you can come back. And I said, I really appreciate that, but no, I just, I always looked at it just like, would they let Ronnie Mincey fly up there for free? He's a citizen of the state of Tennessee, and my voting for gambling or something would have affected, your life and other people around, but you didn't have a vote, you see, Ronnie. I did, so I knew, as you were talking about earlier, I knew the purpose of some of these offers were to get favors.
I also seem to remember once upon a time when there was intense pressure put upon you to vote for a certain person to be the Speaker. Was it Speaker of the House or the Speaker of the Senate?
Speaker of the Senate.
And of course, that's not something that you were in favor of.
No.
And that must have been difficult, because I know you got a lot of pressure from even local people.
Oh, yeah. Ronnie, that's what I call one of those defining moments. Prior to that, I received a call before there's ever the vote on the speakership from, I call it the heavyweights of the party, and I met with them. They wanted to meet me off campus, which meant not in Nashville. They wanted to meet me up. I can tell you exactly. I met them at a Cracker Barrel on, I think it's exit 62 or 3 there, just outside of Bristol. That's where I met. And they said, I hadn't much more than sit down, and they said, okay, here's the deal. You're going to vote how we tell you to vote on the key issues, plus the speaker, or 3 things are going to happen to you. We're going to run somebody against you. We're going to spend every bit of the money we need to spend to beat you, and we're going to trash you in the media, and there's nothing you can do about it because we own the media. And I sit there, and I'm really, Ronnie, I'm really thinking there ought to be a camera around here somewhere. I thought maybe it was like one of those reality shows. And I looked at the guy, and I said, where do you live? And he said, well, you know where I live. I said, that's right. I don't work for you. And he said, well, your days are numbered. I actually said something else, but in essence, your days are numbered. And I said, well, knock yourself out, and then got up and left. And, and when I walked out, I knew then that more than likely I was going to be beaten in the next Senate race. And he said to me, I said to him, I said, well, but people will know that I'm owned, that my vote is not my vote. It's what you and these others are telling me. And he said, no, nobody will know. Said it'll just be, within the circle of the leadership, that sort of thing. And I said, yeah, but I'll know. And when I walk up and down the halls, it's like my vote is not my vote or the public's. It belongs to you all, and I can't do that. So that's the way it went, and I never looked back. So
now, was that in your term as senator?
Senator, yeah.
Was that your last term as senator?
Yes, it was.
So they did indeed carry through with their promises, didn't they?
And I give you an example of that. When the race was going on, we spent around $200,000, which was a lot of money. Well, they spent over $600,000. John McCain landed the plane that he was running for president in Kingsport and campaigned against me. So I'm just I'm a state senator, and here they got a presidential plane landed in Kingsport, and the guy's speaking against me. And that's fine. But I'm just saying that's the kind of stuff they did, which that was their prerogative. And so it was hard, knowing that this, but then during the campaign, my opponent had what I would call a big snafu, but it never made the paper, Ronnie. It never made the paper. And, I knew then, the guy was helping me, because we knew what had happened. There'd been some things happen with him and another person, and I don't want to get into that, but it was stuff that generally sinks a campaign. And I said to him, they're not going to print this story. And I said, that's a deal breaker right there. Anyway, so, but then it came out after the election, because I had people saying, why did you not let this out before? And I said, we couldn't get it out before, So anyway, but unfortunately, Ronnie, as I tell people, I do, I thank God for the opportunities I've had. I've seen the best and the brightest this state has. I've seen people that, like you, that you do your job, you're diligent about it, and you've got your heart in the right place. I trust you with my wallet, so to speak. But then
you can hand it over at any time.
Well, you'd be disappointed. But then, Ronnie, I've seen the dark side of the political thing. So when people say, "Oh, I can't believe they do that," oh, I can tell you what they can do, and
Right.
and if they want to put the target on you, it's tough.
And our purpose in saying all that is not to either down or to praise any certain person.
No.
But the point is, where you're concerned, you stuck with your beliefs and
Yeah.
thereby maintained your integrity.
Yeah.
So even if you lost your position, you still had your integrity.
Yeah. Well, they knew. It's like the thing I learned down there is if you gave someone your word or you said you was going to vote for something, you did it. Or if there was, and I'd always say this to any member, like if you came up and said, Mike, I'd appreciate you voting on this piece of legislation, I would look at it, and if I agreed or thought it was something good for our counties that we had, I would say, well, Ronnie, I'm for this unless somebody tacks on an amendment that, does damage to it or harms it and makes it, and then maybe you might not even be for it. I said, so I always left myself that part, and as long as it stayed clean and good, or worked in our area, I would stay on board. But I said, now if they get it on the House or Senate floor and they change it, then that's not what I agreed to. So
That falls under the old cliche, I'll make you no promises, therefore I'll tell you no lies.
yeah, well,
And that's a good way, in my opinion, to operate.
and you asked me that. I'll tell you one little quick story without mentioning names. It's nothing bad, but along you asking about. There was a vote down there in the Senate one day along the same lines you're talking about, and it was a piece of legislation I was not in favor of at all. But in meeting with the leadership, I had said, okay, I'm not going to speak out against this. I'm going to sit here and just, I'll vote. I'm not going to vote for it, but I'm not going to speak out against it. And unfortunately for me, after you've been there X number of years, people know you. I mean, they know the type of person, like you said, what you'll stand for and what you won't. And a Democrat senator got up just before the vote and he said, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask a member a question on this legislation. And of course, the Speaker said, state your question. And so he said, I want to ask Senator Williams if he likes this piece of legislation. And, so I stood up and he said, Senator Williams said, what do you think about this legislation? I said, well, I didn't want to make the people around me mad. I said, I'm sure there's some merit in it. I think it could be a lot better, so therefore I'm not happy with it. But I think it could be a lot better. Well, we went ahead and voted, and of course I voted against it because I did think it could be a lot better. And but I went over to that senator later, Ronnie, and I said, why did you put me on the spot like that? And he said, well, to be honest with you, we considered you the only one over there that had a conscience, and I knew you would tell me what you really thought. So, yeah.
And
so
that was a good sign.
So it was a compliment,
Yes.
He put me on the spot, but it was a compliment.
And people in politics, we know this too. We remember who wins, but we don't remember who runs.
Right.
I could not sit here right now. You were Union County Mayor for how many terms?
2.
and I could not tell you who ran against you either term.
It's, I don't look at that either, Ronnie, because, once, you go into a classroom, you've done this for years, the students and but at the end of the year, some are grasping things better than others, but you don't differentiate. You try to do them all. And so you go through a campaign and some things are said that you don't like, but at the end of it, the election's over. It stops. Then your job is to govern, and you're going to represent even some of those people that spoke out and said ill things about you. You have to let that go.
Right.
So, and I tell you who taught me a great lesson on that was Ben Ashley, the late Ben Ashley there in Knoxville. Had a piece of legislation one time and brought it up on the Senate floor, and there was a senator, Ronnie, stood up, and I'm telling you, he done everything but undress me. I mean, for carrying this legislation. It wasn't bad. It's just that he was adamantly opposed to it. But I mean, he almost made it personal, So after it was over with and the bill passed, I'm, thankful. But I started to go over there and I saw Ben. Ben was our leader at that time. And I said, Ben, I need to go over there and ask him what was his problem. And Ben looked at me and he said, Mike, let it go. He said, the guy that votes no on you today may be an ally for you tomorrow. If you go over there and confront him, you'll make him mad and he'll never vote with you. And, that was true.
Did you ever read Ronald Reagan's book, My Life?
I've not read it all, Ronnie, but
It's been years since I read it, but I remember one thing about it. He had Senator Ted Kennedy to the White House. Entertained, wined, dined, they had a good evening, very personable. And the next day on the Senate floor, Senator Kennedy just lambasted him.
Yeah.
And he said that he called the senator and he said, Ted, I thought we were friends. And the senator replied, socially, yes. Politically, no.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of truth in that.
So politics, I think most anybody knows the least bit about it. It's not for the thin skin.
No.
Because there are two sides to everything. Somebody's always opposed to everything.
Absolutely. And I've always, like you say, you and I are raised in this area. So back in the day, tobacco was a big issue for us. Well, when I'd go to Nashville in Middle Tennessee, they could care less about tobacco, but they liked wheat and soybean. So when you start talking about our crops up here, they didn't care. But now you talked about wheat and soybean down in the Mississippi Delta, you had their attention. So it's like I always looked at, you could agree with a lot of things, but their raising or the things that were important to them were different than what we had here. Didn't make them right or wrong, but so I had to look at those things.
Now, you were a state representative.
Yes.
State senator.
Yes.
What do you consider was your greatest accomplishment in those two positions?
The thing I loved most about it, Ronnie, was being able to go out and see people and try to bring government back home. Because I think it's just like right now, I don't think our government is of the people, by the people, for the people. I think it's who's got the biggest wallet. And I think the more the money is thrown into politics, the less the people are represented. And that bothers me. But in terms of being there, I think it's like there was times, there were people here in this county, there would be a piece of legislation coming up on the House or Senate floor. I would call somebody. I've called the school system before. I've called people in real estate. I've called, while we were there, and I said, look, this is coming either today or tomorrow. What do you think about this? So it made them not just feel connected, but they were a part of it, which, we collect the tax dollars. They should have a say. And I found out, case in point, Ronnie, first few years down there was a lady that represented pro-life. And she would always come around and talk to us about pro-life issues and things like that. And Ronnie, before I left Nashville, that same lady was representing pro-choice. And she came to my office and was talking to me, and I looked at her and I said, how can you go from pro-life issues to pro-choice? And she looked at me and she said, that's who pays me. And see, I could not do that based on, I have to believe in something to do it. But that's when you learn about, and I mean, I'm not saying good or bad, but lobbyists, they're hired guns. And I always had to remember that when they were telling me stuff, oh, that's what the people back home want. Well, that's not necessarily really the way it is.
Makes you wary of people when their morals change based upon how much money
That's
is in their
180
pocket.
degrees.
Yes. Now, your only other elected position other than state senator and state representative was Union County mayor, correct?
Yes, sir.
How much time elapsed between your Senate term, your last Senate term, and your first term as Union County mayor?
Let's see, I think 2 years,
2 years.
something like that. Because I got out of the Senate in 2008, that election year. And then I ran in 2010. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, 2 years.
And I think one thing about you, not everybody agreed with you all the time, I don't think.
Oh,
But I
sure.
think that most everybody knew that you had a mind of your own.
Sure.
And I would say your integrity had a great deal with you getting elected Union County mayor.
I would hope, yeah.
Now, while you were Union County mayor, of course, that's a little closer to home, a little
Sure.
more personal, you know. Tell us about your years as mayor. What was your favorite part? What was the most challenging part?
Being home, every day rather than have to go to Nashville,
Yes.
it was the greatest. And then being able to go to local events and being directly seeing, like in Nashville, you'd vote on something and you may not see the people to talk about it for a week or two. Here we'd go into county commission meeting, vote on Monday, and the next day at the service station or the local diner or wherever, somebody said, well, why did y'all do this? You heard about it the next day. So you had feedback. So that was something, it was different. But there's that old saying, and there's a lot of truth in it, all politics is local. So, local politics is different than state politics. Now, you still have to work with people. And you still have to develop a sense of trust of what you can or can't do. So it was a learning experience for me initially, but at the same time it was a great experience, one that I didn't take lightly. No.
And this question comes to my mind. I may have some more that go
Sure,
back, but
sure.
this is kind of current.
Sure.
You just very recently passed the torch to your successor.
Sure.
And I know that you and he met and that you discussed the transition. But now that a few months have passed, it's actually been a little over a year, hasn't it? I think. Would your advice to him today be different than it was at the time that he assumed office, based on change in current circumstances?
Probably not, Ronnie, because it's like I've not attended any of the meetings, not going to, because it's not my place, and I don't want to do not want him or the commissioners to feel like I'm trying to influence in any way what they do, because it's not my responsibility now. So, the things I would have said to him then, like now, do the best you can, try to have a vision for the future. You're not going to get everything you want because, there again, you got to convince 16 people to go along with you, or to get a majority of that 16, 9 of them at least to go along with you on something. And so that's a part of the learning curve. So, and things that work for one mayor may not work for another. And so I just think, he's his own man, and I think he'll find his way. Yeah.
As you did.
Yeah, exactly.
As you did. So since you left the mayor's office, what have you done for yourself?
Well, my health is great. I weigh now what I weighed when I was in high school, Ronnie. And,
isn't that so nice? I'm not there yet.
It's just I've not got to travel as much as I want, and that's some of that has to do with just the weather, basically. I mean, and things. But I really enjoy what I'm doing now in terms of I still go over to Richard Childress Racing. I still go over to Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. I volunteer for events. I helped with like at Dale Earnhardt Chevrolet this past summer, a car show, which they had the largest number of entrants they'd ever had. I think it was 355 cars there. And so, it's just, I still keep active there. And it's just, but at the same time, I'm carving out a niche where if I want to travel, get on my motorcycle or my car, whatever, and go, I can do that. So, and that's a little different because always before I've sort of had a lot of, my ex-wife would say I was married to my job, and a lot of truth in that. So now I'm appreciating the freedom to go and do things. Yeah.
And you mentioned ex-wife. I had forgotten you were married.
Yeah, I got married in 96. Yeah.
But now you're living the single life.
Well.
And enjoying it.
Yeah, well, and just so anybody would not think any different, we never argued. It was because of my commitment to my job that she would say to me that you spend more time in your job and doing things than you do at home, which was, so, and I tell young people that because Ronnie, you're in schools. I mean, you go to schools and visit and you've taught school. Children ask, you never know what they're going to ask. So when you go in front of a class, I've been in front of classes talking about government, and at some point some young student will say, are you married? Have you ever been married? Or what happened? And of course the teacher always says, you don't have to answer that. Well, yeah, you do. I mean, it's not a bad answer because number one, I'm not anti-marriage. Number two, we never fought. It's just that, and I say to them, I did not have the proper balance. And she wanted more balance, which she deserved. So that was something I learned, the hard way. But yeah, it was.
And of course, in politics, people are opposed to you. Sometimes feelings do run high. We know that.
Sure.
But you don't seem, from what I can gather, to hold any bitterness against the people of the times.
No. That goes back to the Ben Ashley thing. I mean, they called him Gentle Ben, but I mean, he always said, and I understand people having differences. Like I said, they could have been raised differently. My experiences come from Maynard Ridge up there at my grandmother Alice Cook's restaurant, and my mom, and then working down at high school service station and things. So, or Bill Nicely's store in Luttrell. So, those are experiences that helped develop me, and so I feel blessed with all that. And so who am I to judge somebody? I may not agree with them, but they have every bit of a right to think that or believe what they do, just as I do. So, yeah.
I've had you on the spot long enough, so one last question.
Sure.
What is in store for Mike Williams from this point on?
Well, I tell you what, Ronnie, when we look at that crystal ball, the thing I'm really planning on right now is next year I'll be 66. I'm 65 now.
You wear it well. You don't look any older than you did the first time I saw you. A little grayer.
I'll be 66 next year, and I plan on doing Route 66 either on a motorcycle or I preferably like to do it on my motorcycle. Because that's just something, it'll be harder, but that's just something I've always wanted to do. I've been on the road with a group of people before, but I didn't get to stop and see everything I wanted to see because we were on like a time constraint. But I want to do some things like that. I've been to the Outer Banks, so ultimately I want to go coast to coast on the motorcycle.
That sounds great.
So, and that's as far as I can see, I'm enjoying doing some things and enjoying it.
Life's good.
Life's good, yes, sir.
Great. I lied. I do have one more question.
Sure.
Since we have a bully pulpit right here for a few minutes of our lives anyway, is there a final word you'd like to say to the people of Union County?
The thing I would say to the people of Union County is that I'm very appreciative for every opportunity they've given me to serve. And I can't give any more, answer to that, Ronnie, is the very first time I ever got to go on a plane with a Tennessee governor. The very first time. Before we took off, we're on the runway, Ronnie. The very first time, I thought, I'm going to make a couple of phone calls because this, here's a Union County boy from, I'm on the plane, the governor's sitting right here beside me. And I called my mother. I said, Mom, guess where I am? I'm sitting on the plane with the governor. We're getting ready to fly somewhere. The next call, Ronnie Mincey, was to James High School. I said, James, guess where I am? Of course, he didn't have a clue. I said, you know, the guy that used to change tires, get greasy, you know, change oil stuff at your station, I'm sitting on a plane with the governor. We're getting ready to fly to some event or something, and I want you to feel a part of it. And that's just, when I did things, I always wanted the people to know that I was connected with them, that I never forgot them. And that's, you know, if I could leave one thing with the people of Union County is, you know, my not being in Nashville is because I believed in them more so than I believed in the politics. So, and I have no regrets.
That's great. Mike, it's been a pure pleasure
Oh,
to have
thank
these
you,
few
Ronnie.
minutes to chat with you.
Yeah, I've loved it. Thank you very much. And I appreciate what you and others are doing for our educational system.
And we appreciate you for
Yeah.
what you've done for our state and for
Yeah.
Union County.
Well, thank you.
And to all of you folks, we thank you for tuning in to this segment of Uniquely Union, a series of interviews with Union County residents and business people who have helped make our county the great place it is to live and work. I'm Ronnie Mincey, and thank you for joining us.